Weather today in the greater Cincinnati area.
I love you so badly, I could...
They're solid plastic, so don't settle for imitation.
But the senator, while insisting he was not intoxicated, could not explain his nudity.
Hello, fellow babies. Welcome to a special edition of the Discovery Podcast. I'm Eric Senich. This is an episode I've been looking forward to, but just needed to find the right time to do it, and what better time than now? If you've listened to Discovery, you already know we get into albums, songs, and artists from the classic rock era. Well, today's episode is all about a TV show, about a radio station that played classic rock. 41 years ago this week, the legendary television show Wkrp in Cincinnati debuted. The show ran from 1978 to 1982 on CBS. I discovered KRP in Cincinnati when it ran in reruns on the local NBC affiliate in the mid to late 80s. Back-to-back episodes every weekday afternoon after school I was watching. And it was right around the time when I really wanted to become a rock and roll disc jockey. My dad worked in the radio business for over 40 years, so I'd been to radio stations with him. Radio was in my blood by that point. Years later, E! Entertainment picked up the show, and I would watch the episodes whenever they aired. Eventually, I got into the radio business in the mid-90s, and the majority of my professional broadcasting career was working as a rock and roll disc jockey in Connecticut, so the show had an even stronger connection to me. Fast forward to this past June, and I finally got the entire DVD set of every season. Got it for my birthday. I've been wanting it for the longest time. My mom came through. Who's better than our moms? So I've got all the episodes. I've done my research, and I'm ready to go. In this episode, we'll talk about the actual radio station and song that inspired the show, the actors who play the crazy characters in it, the iconic theme music, clips from the best episodes, and a whole lot more. So don't touch that dial. You're about to discover the story of Wkrp in Cincinnati. The story of Wkrp in Cincinnati starts with the creator, Hugh Wilson. Wilson was born on August 21st, 1943 in Miami, Florida. In 1966, he entered the advertising business in Atlanta at the Burton Campbell Agency. He also worked as an ad salesman at a top 40 radio station in Atlanta called WQXI. QXI was a powerhouse station back when AM radio ruled. It also had, like most radio stations do, some very interesting characters on the staff who often did some interesting things. Actually, they were more than interesting. They were stories so over the top they were just begging to be told. In 1975, Wilson landed a position with MTM Enterprises, the independent production company established in 1969 by Mary Tyler Moore and her then-husband Grant Tinker. Wilson would go on to write for The Bob Newhart Show and The Tony Randall Show before creating Wkrp in Cincinnati. The premise of Wilson's new show? A radio station's new program director, Andy Travis, is hired to turn around a struggling, easy-listening radio station by switching its format to rock and roll. Among his challenges, a mostly incompetent staff and a ruthless, domineering owner who also happens to be the mother of the station's general manager. Here's Wilson from an interview sometime around 2015 or 16. It's courtesy of the Archive of American Television and the Writers Guild Foundation. He's talking about coming up with the show idea, which was inspired by his days working at WQXI in Atlanta.
I had an apartment in the Hollywood Hills at the time and sat down with my wife and I said, you know what, a radio station would be good. I was been in the advertising business in Atlanta, and I knew a lot, and I loved to write radio commercials because you didn't need a big budget to do a bang-up job. In television, if you didn't have the money, you were really in trouble. But in the radio, you could buy a sound effect for $30. And so I loved that, and I knew a lot of the radio people. So I came up with the WKRP in Cincinnati thing, and I flew back to Atlanta, and I spent about a week at WQXI in Atlanta and just hung around because I wanted the show to be authentic in the eyes of people who worked in radio stations. And it all was, except I wanted turntables, and by then they were using cassettes. But that was really my only concession to not trying to be very realistic. But I knew these characters. Skinny Bobby Harper was the morning man at QXI. He was a friend of mine. He'd be leaving the bar when I'd be coming into it because he had to go home to go to bed, and he was a wonderful guy, and so Dr. Johnny Fever kind of became him. My friend Clark Brown was going around in polyester suits selling radio time. He became Herb Tarlick. There was no Lonnie Anderson, her character, Jennifer Marlowe. That was a complete... I think I've said in the past, it's probably true, that Bailey Quarters kind of reminded me of my wife, who is ambitious but in a shy way. Certainly, Mr. Carlson, the guy that ran the place, was based on a previous boss of mine that'll go unnamed. So they were all based on people that I knew.
The show was also inspired by a Harry Chapin song called WOLD from 1973. It's about a DJ who has regrets but has chosen his lot in life, spinning discs.
Hello, honey, it's me. What did you think when you heard me back on the radio? What did the kids say when they knew it was their long-lost daddy-o?
The story goes that Wilson heard this song and thought it'd make a great sitcom premise. When it came time to pitch the idea to CBS, Wilson admitted he was extremely nervous, but his idea went over, and later attributes it to not just having a good show idea, but pitching it to people who had previously worked in radio themselves.
When I took the show to CBS, the idea, sort of a scenario of it, first of all, I was seated next to Grant Tinker, who just had so much clout. That was so important. But the other thing was, it was a blessing for me I hadn't counted on, is almost all of the people at CBS who picked and chose what shows had a background in radio, and it was kind of warm to their hearts. So I think that really helped.
As for the station call letters, Wilson said he chose WKRP because they weren't being used by an actual station. He initially wanted to use WSOS or WHLP, but those were taken. To bring his premise to life, Wilson needed just the right cast of actors that could play the cast of characters that made up WKRP. We'll start with the character of Andy Travis, the newly hired program director. Before coming to Cincinnati, he had a spotless record of turning failed radio stations into a success.
Howdy, I'm Andy Travis, the new program director. Mr. Carlson, it strikes me that you don't really remember hiring me.
Of course I do.
I quit my job in Santa Fe.
You did?
Yeah, I took an apartment here in Cincinnati, too.
Ooh, do you think that's wise?
Mr. Carlson, we talked on the phone, right? And you promised me a free hand to run this station.
I should never use the phone. Cut that thing in half. Just use it for listening.
You made a big mistake in coming here.
Where are you going, cowboy?
Well, I don't really know, but I know where you're going.
Yeah?
Yes, sir. You're going back to playing music on this station that was way out of date 20 years ago and losing $100,000 a year.
Where'd you get a figure like that?
From you?
Oh, yeah, right.
Actor Gary Sandy was to take on the role. Wilson had selected all of the cast members, with the exception of Sandy, who CBS chose. Here's Wilson talking about Sandy.
Wonderful, wonderful guy, dear friend. Gary had an energy about him, and he would move around the set almost at a trot, and I told him that heroes never hurry. And that was the biggest gripe he and I had, because he was full of energy and he would move, and I don't know where I got that, but I knew that I'd never seen John Wayne rush over, and he was, playing that guy.
Gary Sandy was born on Christmas Day 1945 in Dayton, Ohio. He attended Fairmont High School in Kettering, Ohio, and lived in Moraine, Ohio. He later attended Wilmington College in Wilmington, Ohio, and the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York City, before landing his first acting gig in 1969 on the soap opera Another World, and As the World Turns the following year. He did more soap opera work along with parts in movies and television shows, including Starsky and Hutch and Chips in 1976, before landing the role as Andy Travis on WKRP. Here's a recent interview with Sandy included on the bonus disc of the DVD box set, where he talks about the role of Andy Travis.
This was about a place, an art form as far as I'm concerned, because I've always been enamored by radio. And here was a script that did all three for me. I love music. I was enamored of radio, and I like to think I'm an actor, and I get to do all three? Give me a break. This was great. So when I read that script, I really wanted this part. He was the guy, a whiz kid guy from New Mexico, Santa Fe, New Mexico, supposedly, who comes into radio stations, turns them around, and moves on. That's what he does. So I thought, well, to be the straight man is pretty good, because I had done a lot of soap operas where I was the heavies. I was always the bad guy. As a matter of fact, Charters, Hugh Wilson's wife, said, "You can't hire that guy. He's out of his mind." So I always played the heavies, you know. So here I was going to get a chance on my first sitcom to play the straight man. The through line for the Travis character was he was a whiz kid that comes in and turns stations around and leaves. This time, not only can he not turn it around in a timely fashion, but something happens where he falls in love with the people, and he doesn't want to leave. I think along the way you'll begin to see what I tried to do, which is he becomes a little nuts himself.
Next is Arthur Carlson, a.k.a. the big guy. He's the station's general manager who really has little to no control over day-to-day operations at the station, mostly because he's constantly under the thumb of the station's owner, who happens to be his mother, a.k.a. Mother Carlson.
I can be tough. I can be mean. And I can make those hard decisions. And the first decision we're going to have to make around here is what we're going to do about Mama.
Mama?
Yeah, my mother. She owns this station. I've got to answer to her for everything that goes on around here.
We do. I thought you said you were in charge here.
I am in charge here, and don't you forget it, Buster. But sometimes Mama scares me a little bit.
Arthur's a big kid who prefers playing games, planning his next fishing trip, and sometimes napping in his office over hiring, firing, and making important business decisions. But over time, we discover that he is also a man with principles. A kind, decent, and sometimes surprisingly wise man. Ultimately, you can't help but love the big guy. Arthur Carlson was played by Gordon Jump, who was born on April Fool's Day, April 1st, 1932, in Dayton, Ohio. Jump came from a radio background. He graduated from Otterbein College in Westerville, Ohio in 1955, and in 1957 he graduated with a degree in journalism from Kansas State University, where he worked for KSDB, the Kansas State student radio station. He began his career working at radio and television stations in Manhattan and Topeka, Kansas. In 1959, he was the weatherman on Topeka's WIBW-TV. In the early 1960s, Jump performed on the station's weekday after-school children's program as Wib the Clown. He would have to quickly wipe off the makeup, change out of his outfit, change into a suit and tie, and report the weather on the local evening news. He later returned to Dayton and worked as a producer and on-air personality in Gordon Jump's Fun Time, a popular show for younger children which aired on WLWD before moving to Los Angeles and study acting. Jump first began his acting career in the 1960s with minor roles in television shows like Get Smart and Green Acres. He also guest starred in a number of series during the 1970s, including The Rockford Files, The Incredible Hulk, Starsky and Hutch, Lou Grant, Kojak, The Bionic Woman, The Mary Tyler Moore Show, and The Hardy Boys' Nancy Drew Mysteries. In 1978, he landed the role on Wkrp in Cincinnati. Here's Jump in a 1996 radio interview posted to YouTube.
There was a lot of stuff on that show that you could not, I don't even think you could do it today. Seriously, because of political correctness. Like the end of the episode where Johnny went away to California, came back, and you thought you had cocaine on your foot.
Oh, yes, that's right.
I was on the floor. I was laughing on the floor when you did that one little scene. When you're beating your foot.
Beating my foot, and I said to Andy Travis, Andy, I think I got a monkey on my foot.
That's the one. That's the one. That was hilarious, and the Thanksgiving turkey giveaway that you did.
Oh, the ultimate.
The ultimate.
23 minutes to set up one line. As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly.
That's the one.
That's the one.
I mean, like I can imagine if you did that today, you'd have the ASPCA and everything on your back.
Well, we might. We were considered a little irreverent, but it was still good family, wholesome family entertainment, I think.
It was the funniest stuff that I had ever seen on television.
Hugh Wilson, who was the writer-creator of WKRP, I thought was was pure genius. And I sometimes thought he walked on the razor's edge because he was just between sanity and insanity, but he did it so well.
Here's Hugh Wilson's thoughts on Jump.
One of the nicest men that ever lived. Great guy. Very funny. He was big, comedically big, and my tendency is usually to say a little less big, but I only did that a couple of times.
As for the aforementioned Mother Carlson, Lillian Carlson is Arthur Carlson's ruthless, domineering mother and the owner of Wkrp. An extremely successful and rich businesswoman, her only regret is that her "what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger" approach to parenting didn't work out as planned, as her son ended up indecisive, weak-willed, and afraid of her. As a display of her cutthroat attitude, she has a painting hanging above her fireplace in her living room of 2 pairs of dangling legs of people just hanged. Mother Carlson was played by 2 different actors. In the pilot episode, she's played by Sylvia Sidney.
Mr. Travis, are you responsible for the strange sounds I heard emanating from my radio this morning?
I am.
Well, explain yourself.
Well, I like the sounds you heard this morning.
Young man, this radio station is a business. It is not here for your personal listening pleasure.
Born August 8, 1910 in Bronx, New York, Sidney's career dated back to the 1930s, where she played the lead in several films and worked with some of the biggest actors of the time like Gary Cooper, Spencer Tracy, Henry Fonda, and Cary Grant. Years later, she would become known for her role in 1988's Beetlejuice, starring Michael Keaton. Sidney played Juno, a caseworker in the afterlife. As for her short-lived stint on KRP, Hugh Wilson said Sidney was not pleasant to work with, didn't get along with the cast or producers, and thought the show was ridiculous. After the pilot episode, the role was given to and remained with Carol Bruce.
Mr. Travis, I'm a very smart woman. I own and operate a multitude of highly successful businesses.
Oh, good for you.
But I am a rotten mother. Ever since Arthur was a child, I pushed and bullied him because I thought it would make him hard and strong. Well, I was wrong. It made him soft and weak.
No, I don't think so.
Maybe not. Do you know today was the first time Arthur ever walked out of a room without asking my permission? That's a very good sign.
Born November 15, 1919 in New York City, Bruce was a singer and Broadway star who landed roles in both TV and film, including the 1941 Abbott and Costello movie Keep 'Em Flying. Where would Arthur Carlson be without Jennifer Marlowe? Actually, where would the entire station be without her? Jennifer is the station's receptionist and the highest paid employee. She's more than just a pretty face. She's smart, strong, and wise beyond her years. And she knows it.
You want me, Mr. Carlson?
Oh, yeah, come in, Jennifer. Have a seat.
No, thank you.
Well, all right. At this particular point in time, I would like to dictate a press release.
I don't take dictation.
What? Oh, all right. I guess I can do this thing myself. It's probably going to be a long meeting, though, so why don't you get coffee for all the guys here?
I don't get coffee, Mr. Carlson. We agreed. You have to draw the line somewhere. Will there be anything else I can do?
No, I got about a dozen.
Thank you.
Oh, no. Thank you. How did she get away with that?
Are you kidding?
The role of Jennifer was played by Lonnie Anderson. Born August 5, 1945 in St. Paul, Minnesota, she grew up in suburban Roseville, Minnesota. As a senior at Alexander Ramsey Senior High School in Roseville, she was voted Valentine Queen of the Valentine's Day Winter Formal of 1963. Her acting debut came in 1966 with a small part in the film Nevada Smith, starring Steve McQueen, but it would be another decade before she landed another role. She earned guest roles on TV shows in the mid-70s, including SWAT, Policewoman, and Harry O. She auditioned for the role of Chrissy in Three's Company, but lost out to Suzanne Summers. She did end up getting a guest starring spot on an episode of Three's Company as Susan Walters, and it was that appearance that brought her to the attention of the ABC network. She was eventually offered the role on WKRP when producers saw the poster of her in a red swimsuit. Wilson later admitted Anderson got the role because her body resembled Jane Mansfield and had the innocent sexuality of Marilyn Monroe. Here's Anderson in a recent interview talking to WXYZ in Detroit about her character.
We were such a family, and that we're just as close off-screen as on, and it was the beginning pretty much for everybody. So whatever happened to us, we were all holding hands backstage, and Tim Reed said, it's never going to be like this ever again because our lives are going to change. And that was the beginning of the pilot, and he was so right. I think my character at the time went against the type of the time. Now, kids today are pretty used to seeing somebody glamorous and smart, but really in the 70s that wasn't happening too much. And so it was really something for young girls and young women to identify with.
And here's what Hugh Wilson had to say about Anderson.
Lonnie Anderson had never done comedy. She was rock solid. I never had to rewrite a line for Lonnie. She just was great. She wouldn't let me. Sometimes I went too far. I had her say one time, bring me the head of Farrah Fawcett Major, and she said, are you mad? Have you lost your mind? I'm not going to say that on television. She was really right, but she was awfully good.
Bailey Quarters. She's the young, innocent wallflower of the radio station and originally hired to be in charge of billing and scheduling the station's commercials.
Bailey, I'm having a meeting with Nessman and Charlotte, and I want you to be there.
Me?
Well, you work here, don't you?
Well, yeah, but I've never gone to a meeting before.
Well, that's been a mistake.
Oh, I always thought so.
Underneath the shy exterior is a journalism graduate who really wants to rise through the ranks to broadcast executive. As the series rolls on, Bailey overcomes her shyness and little by little takes on more and more responsibility, including getting behind the mic to do the news, much to the disappointment with the station's newsman, Les Nessman. She also becomes romantically involved with Johnny Fever. The role was played by Jan Smithers, one of two cast members who were the first choice for the role they played, Gordon Jump being the other. She was born July 3, 1949 in North Hollywood, Los Angeles. In 1966, Smithers was interviewed by Newsweek for a story about typical American teenagers in the 1960s. She was photographed riding on the back of a friend's motorcycle. The photo made the cover of the magazine and led to work in commercials while she was continuing her art studies at California Institute of the Arts in Valencia. She had never done a situation comedy before, yet impressed creator Hugh Wilson, later saying, quote, other actresses read better for the part, but they were playing shy. Jan was shy. Here's Smithers and Wilson from a 2014 cast reunion held at the Paley Center in Los Angeles. It was hosted by legendary rock disc jockey Jim Ladd.
I've known a lot of women like Bailey, who in the early days of rock radio, as progressive as we were, the women's movement, civil rights, all the things that we were trying to do, there was still a lot of chauvinism in that era. And I've known some very bright, beautiful women who had to kind of fight to be taken seriously. And Bailey had that thing. I remember, you can't come to the meeting or get the coffee. But then, fortunately, that was out and you came in and created this wonderful character. Did you feel like you were making a statement when you were doing that?
Actually, not in the beginning. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what I was doing in the beginning. To tell you the dang truth. I had 3 lines, I think, on the interview when I came into your office, which was me, me, and me. 3 lines, and try to make me, and me into some kind of dialogue, and I'm not sure why you hired me in the first place with those 3 lines.
I know why.
Well...
Yeah, Lonnie Anderson and Jan Smithers on a TV show. I think I'm not only chasing numbers, but I have a reason to get out of bed in the morning. Jan was wonderful.
Herb Tarlick, WKRP's sales manager. He often wears loud plaid suits with his belt matching his white shoes. Lacks etiquette, you could say. And although he's a married man with kids, he doesn't think twice about flirting with the station receptionist, Jennifer Marlowe.
Morning, Jennifer.
Morning, Herb.
Any calls?
No.
Messages?
Nope.
Mail?
None.
Okay. How about lunch?
No lunch either.
Dinner?
Busy.
Okay. How about later at my place?
You're married, Herb.
Oh, yeah. What's it going to take with you, Jennifer? I mean, you're talking to the sales manager here. I mean, what do you want? Watches, jewelry, a side of beef fully dressed? I can fix anything. You want to meet Burt Convey in person? I mean, they don't call me Mr. Kickback for nothing.
He also has trouble landing the big accounts, but excels when it comes to selling airtime for products such as Red Wigglers, the Cadillac of Worms. Herb Tarlek was played by Frank Bonner. Bonner was born February 28, 1942 in Little Rock, Arkansas. He started his acting career in the 1967 independent horror film called The Equinox, A Journey into the Unknown, which was remade as the 1970 cult classic Equinox. He's credited as Frank Bors Jr.
You are all such fools, you and your friend Waterman, who was handed the secrets of the powers of darkness and then didn't know what to do with them. That barrier is the result of his work. Ha! Now do you see how helpless you are? And now for those two girls.
Bonner went on to appear in television shows throughout the early to mid-70s, including Emergency, Love American Style, Cannon, and Policewoman, before joining the cast of WKRP in Cincinnati. Some Herb trivia. You'll notice he has a University of Arkansas Razorback coffee mug on his desk. That is a tribute to his home state. Another has to do with Herb's tacky suits. There's a famous line from the show in the second season episode, Put Up or Shut Up, where Venus Flytrap tells Herb, "Somewhere out there there's a Volkswagen with no seats." Apparently, Herb really did wear a suit on the show that was made out of Volkswagen seat covers. Here's Hugh Wilson talking about Bonner and his co-star Richard Sanders, who played Les Nessman.
Frank Bonner is another man I just love. He's such a good guy. And he was great at Herb, and he and Richard, you know, they were the glue. Richard Sanders. I mean, Lonnie was getting all the magazine covers, and Howard was even getting write-ups in Rolling Stone, and he was invited to host Saturday Night Live. But it was Herb and Les that were the most dysfunctional and therefore funniest characters. And they were just beauts to write for. I loved him to death.
As for Les Nessman, he was the station's news anchorman. Always wearing a bow tie, always taking his job very seriously.
Good morning, Jennifer.
Hi, Les. Les, this is Andy Travis, our new program director.
Well, howdy. So you're Travis? Yeah, that's right.
Oh, Les is in charge of news, weather, sports.
The last program director lasted 30 minutes before the big guy fired him.
Traffic and what else, Les?
Award-winning farm reports. So watch your step, mister.
Despite this, he's not the most competent reporter on the radio dial. Unfortunately for the rest of the staff, Nessman is not even remotely aware of his incompetence.
Now here's Les Nessman and the news.
Good morning. This is Les Nessman reporting. In the top story of the day, General Wallace Nasami, head of the emerging nation of Libya, denied his new government was a dictatorship and promised free elections as soon as each citizen of the small country learned to play a musical instrument. Nasami said this was part of a new cultural program. Turning to sports... Winner of this week's Gulf Coast Golf Classic was Chai Rodriguez. Chai finished with a 9 under par score.
Chi Rodriguez.
Hopefully, Mr. Rodriguez will play up to par in his next competition.
He even pretends to have his own office by putting masking tape on the floor around his desk, which represents non-existent walls.
I went to the trouble of putting these lines here to indicate the walls of the private office a news director should have. I would appreciate it if you would be kind enough to observe them.
Jeez. What's wrong with him?
I don't know, Herb.
Boy, guy gets a Gray Hog Award and he suddenly gets snooty on us.
Herb?
It's all right, he can't hear us, his door's closed.
Along with the bow tie, Nessman always has a bandage in a different spot on each episode. This was the result of repeated attacks by Phil, Nessman's very big and very angry dog. In actuality, this part of Nessman's appearance wasn't planned by the writers. During the taping of the pilot, Richard Sanders bumped his head on a studio light and had to wear a bandage to cover the cut. From then on, Sanders decided the character would always wear a bandage. Les Nessman is very proud of his knowledge of agriculture, especially hogs. He won several Buckeye Newshawk Awards for reporting on taproot vegetable production in the tri-state area and northern West Virginia. As impressive as that is, nothing comes close to his most prized award, the coveted Silver Sow, specifically awarded to him because of his exceptional job with hog reporting. As mentioned, the character of Les Nessman was played by Richard Sanders. He was born August 23, 1940, in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. After graduating from Leavenworth High School in Leavenworth, Kansas, he was enrolled in the Fine Arts Department at Carnegie Institute of Technology, now known as Carnegie Mellon University, as an acting major from 1958 to 1962. After graduation, Sanders studied Shakespearean theater in England on a Fulbright scholarship and served a stint with the Peace Corps in Brazil. He landed roles in TV shows and movies starting in 1971 and appeared in shows like Lou Grant, Barnaby Jones, Kojak, and Rockford Files before joining the cast of Wkrp in Cincinnati. Now on to the DJs, starting with Venus Flytrap, the smooth-talking evening DJ at KRP.
Andy, my man, what's going on? Venus, how you doing?
What is that?
Oh, may I introduce Mr. Venus Flytrap?
Hey, little mama.
I beg your pardon.
Venus is the best nighttime DJ in this country. I took the liberty of hiring him away from the station in New Orleans.
Did you have a big audience there?
The biggest.
Welcome to Cincinnati, Mr. Flytrap.
That's a mean little mama.
You bet. Herb, Les, why don't you show Venus around the station?
Do it.
You know, Mr. Flytrap, I have some ideas about that nighttime show.
Yeah?
I do the sports news here, Mr. Flytrap. I don't know if you've noticed, but there certainly are a lot of Negroes in sports.
Yeah, well... Say what?
His real name, Gordon Sims, is almost never used, and he maintains an aura of mystery early on until it's revealed that he's a Vietnam War deserter wanted by the U.S. Army. In later episodes, it's also revealed that he spent several years as a high school teacher in New Orleans while working part-time as a radio personality. Venus Flytrap was played by Tim Reed. Born December 19, 1944 in Norfolk, Virginia, Reed earned his Bachelor of Business Administration at Norfolk State College in 1968. After graduation, he was hired by DuPont Corporation, where he worked for 3 years. Reed's entertainment career also began in 1968. He and insurance salesman Tom Dreesen met at a Junior Chamber of Commerce meeting near Chicago. They were put together to promote an anti-drug program in the local schools, and as a result of a comment from one of the children, decided to form a comedy team which they called Tim and Tom. It was the first interracial comedy duo. Reed appeared on various TV shows in the mid-'70s, including Rhoda and the short-lived The Richard Pryor Show.
Richard is my main man. I mean, he's really, truly a credit to his parents, Sammy Davis Jr. and Miss Jane Pittman.
Reed also appeared on Lou Grant, What's Happening, and Maude before landing the role of Venus Flytrap on Wkrp in Cincinnati. Here's Reed in a 2014 interview with Red Carpet Report on Mingle Media TV, talking about his character.
When I read the script, there was really much about him that I felt connected to because it was sort of broad. If you look at the first episode, it was a yo mama, big hat, ermine coat, but Hugh, the creator and producer and head writer, assured me that they were going to explore the duality of the person. All jocks have this sort of persona, but when you see them in life, you're going, "Oh, they don't look like who I thought they would." Well, he promised me, and he lived to his honor by allowing the character to grow. So he began to ask me about my personal life. I was in the Eastern religions then, and gongs and incense, and we began to work that into the character. And then all of a sudden, with that, he allowed me to make my own. Most of the clothes I designed for the character. I picked my own music. I had the pleasure of helping to break Bob Marley in America because Bob Marley wasn't played on radio. And I began to play Bob Marley. I had a big picture of him on the door. And all those things began to allow me to broaden my personal interest in music and what I was going to. And so they began to blend. At some point, there was a fusion. And it's taken me years to get rid of Venus.
Some Venus Flytrap trivia. The Saturday Night Live character, the Ladies' Man, played by Tim Meadows, was inspired by Venus Flytrap.
It was happening, and welcome to the Ladies' Man. The love line with all the right responses to your romantic queries. I'm Leon Felton. How y'all doing tonight?
And last, but certainly not least, there's Dr. Johnny Fever. Real name John R. Caravella. Johnny Fever is a veteran disc jockey who comes to WKRP after being fired from a major Los Angeles station when he said booger on the air.
You Travis? Yeah, that's right. Oh. I'm Johnny Caravella. I'm also known as Johnny Midnight, Johnny Cool, Johnny Duke, Johnny Style, and Johnny Sunshine. You can call me Johnny, okay?
Well, it's nice to meet you, Johnny.
Mind if I sit down?
No, please.
I'm the morning man. I just got off the air. Got insomnia, you know. Can't go to sleep before 3. I gotta get up about 5, get in here, be on the air by 6. This coffee keeps me sharp as a tack. You mind if I lie down?
Go right ahead. Sunshine, haven't I heard of you?
You're not a cop, are you?
Johnny Sunshine. Johnny Sunshine, I remember. Yeah, it was Los Angeles in the late 60s. Johnny Sunshine boss Jack. Hey, you were very hot, man.
Yeah.
Something happened there, though. Station fired you for some reason.
Well, I'll tell you something, baby. They all fire you sooner or later.
Yeah, no, but this was something that you, something you did.
Yeah, well, we all do things, right?
It was something that you said.
Yeah. Booger.
What?
I used the word booger on the air.
That's right.
Yeah. I was making about $100,000 a year out there. Then one day I said booger. Bunch of bozos called the station. Next thing I know, I'm in Amarillo hosting a garden show.
The role of Dr. Johnny Fever was played by Howard Hessman, born February 27, 1940, in Lebanon, Oregon. He graduated from Silverton High School in 1958 and attended the University of Oregon. He was later a founding member of the San Francisco-based improvisational comedy troupe called The Committee. Under the alias of Don Sturdy, Hessman made some television appearances, including one episode of Dragnet in 1968. In it, he plays a hippie named Jesse Chaplin, the editor of an underground newspaper.
The establishment needs the goon squads with the mace and the clubs and the guns and the tear gas to preserve the evils of the status quo. You ask me who needs them, and I say it's not the black people, it's not the Mexican Americans, and it's not the students. They're just trying to make a new and better world. Who needs them are the fascists. The establishment fat cats who have been rapping on us and sucking our blood for thousands of years and are now getting a little uptight because we, the people, are getting sick and tired of it.
Also in 1968, Hessman played a bit part in 2 final season episodes of The Andy Griffith Show, along with several appearances on The Bob Newhart Show. In 1969, he appeared uncredited in several sketches on The Dick Cavett Show, including an appearance in one sketch with guest Janis Joplin. Hessman also worked as a DJ in San Francisco at KMPX-FM for several months. KMPX was best known in the late 60s as the birthplace of the freeform progressive rock format, led by legendary DJ Tom Donahue. Donahue hired personalities who fit the format, and Hessman was one of those personalities. Known as Don Sturdy, he mixed rock, blues, jazz, and folk on his show. Hessman also had several film and television appearances under his belt by the mid to late 70s, including appearances on Rhoda, Sanford & Son, Beretta, Laverne and Shirley, Quincy M.E., The Rockford Files, and Soap. He even played an uncredited carnival worker in the Steve Martin 1979 comedy The Jerk, before landing the role of Dr. Johnny Fever on Wkrp in Cincinnati. When they were auditioning actors, the role originally went to David Cassidy, but he turned down the part, so the auditions continued. Initially, Hessman was asked to audition for the role of Herb Tarlick. After reading the script, he felt he was perfect for the role of Johnny Fever, and he was. Here's Hessman with Detroit's WXYZ-TV talking about the Johnny Fever character.
Well, it was great being there, first of all, because it was a lovely company of actors, bolstered by a lovely bunch of writers, so it made going to work fun every day. And secondly, the opportunity to introduce so much music to an audience that may not have been familiar with it. I liked the idea of Fever being a soul man from the 60s. And in the 70s and 80s, that was already passé. So a chance to reintroduce an audience to Otis Redding and Wilson Pickett, Sam and Dave, Joe Tex, people like that, James Brown.
Yeah.
That was exciting, and the music became the ninth character of the show.
It was like the ninth star.
For Tim and I to be able to pick our own music and write our own patter about it, which was the largesse given us by Hugh Wilson, the creator of the show, was a real gift. But the major gift was just being with those 7 people.
One interesting piece of Johnny Fever trivia. In close-ups, the names he used on air at all of his previous gigs are all on the side of his coffee cup. Johnny Duke, Johnny Style, Johnny Cool, Johnny Sunshine, and Johnny Fever. 3 other DJs at the station are mentioned on the show, but never seen, with just one exception. There's Moss Steiger, who has the graveyard shift after Venus, and he's mentioned as having attempted suicide at least twice. Rex Earhart hosts a program after Johnny Fever's morning show. Rex was seen in Season 4 during the episode called Rumors, and played by Sam Anderson. And Dean the Dream has the afternoon drive slot. Another short-lived DJ, Doug Winter, played by Philip Charles McKenzie, was hired and fired in the same episode called Johnny Comes Back. WKRP had some other memorable characters who made their appearances off and on throughout its 4-year run. There was Arthur Carlson's wife Carmen, played by Alan Ann McCleary. Mother Carlson's hilarious butler Hirsch, played brilliantly by Ian Wolfe. Herb Tarlick's wife Lucille Tarlick, played by Edie McClurg. And who can forget Bucky Dornster, WKRP's station engineer.
Hey, Bucky! Yeah? Bucky, you ready? Yeah?
Hang on, Del, baby. Here we go.
Let's test it! Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, power!
You're going to have to answer to Engineers Local 601 if I don't get my lunch.
Bucky was played by the series writer Bill Dial. So that's a rundown of the cast. Before we get to the show itself, we have to talk about the show's classic theme songs. WKRP had 2 musical themes, one opening and the other closing the show. The opening theme, called WKRP and Cincinnati Main Theme, was written by Tom Wells, with lyrics by series creator Hugh Wilson. Contrary to urban myth that Richard Sanders, who played Les Nessman, sings the song, it's actually sung by Steve Carlisle.
Baby, if you've ever wondered whatever became of me, I'm living on the air in Cincinnati, WKRP. Got kind of tired of packing and unpacking, town to town, up and down the dial. Maybe you and me were never meant to be, just maybe think of me once in a while. I'm at WKRP in Cincinnati.
A full-length version of the original theme song was released in 1979 on a 45 RPM vinyl single on the MCA Records label. The lyrics referred to the life of character Andy Travis.
Heading up that highway, leaving you behind. Hardest thing I ever had to do. Broke my heart in two, but baby, pay no mind. The price for finding me was losing you.
It went to number 65 in the Billboard Hot 100 chart in 1981 and number 29 on the Adult Contemporary chart in 1982.
I'm at WKRP in Cincinnati.
The closing theme, WKRP in Cincinnati End Credits, was written and performed by Jim Ellis, an Atlanta musician who recorded some of the music heard between scenes for the show. Ellis didn't have lyrics yet, so he improvised a bunch of words, some not being actual words at all, just to give an idea of how the finished theme would sound. Hugh Wilson thought the gibberish lyrics Ellis sung were hilarious and perfect for the show's ending theme. He even saw it as a satire on how incomprehensible rock songs of the time were. All right, it's time to get to the best of the best episodes from all 4 seasons of WKRP in Cincinnati. Before we do that, though, a word from our sponsor.
WKRP in Cincinnati will be back after this.
Ferryman Memorial Park offers you and your loved ones complete funeral services at a reasonable price.
Hey, you're young and swinging, no time to think about tomorrow, but there ain't no way to deny it. Someday you're gonna buy
Six convenient locations, plus for group rates and free parking. It's all yours at Ferryman Funeral Home.
Let's tune in to WKRP AM radio, where your advertising dollar works its hardest.
WKRP, Cincinnati.
Welcome back to the Discovery Podcast WKRP in Cincinnati episode. Season 1 of KRP first aired on Monday night, September 18th, 1978 at 8 p.m. It went up against Welcome Back, Kotter on ABC and Little House on the Prairie on NBC. In this debut episode, Andy Travis takes over as program director at WKRP, a Cincinnati easy listening station, and its first job is to change the format to rock music.
Howdy, I'm Andy Travis, the new program director.
I suppose you've worked at stations that make really big money, huh?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, I have. A lot of them.
We used to make money around here, you know. Of course, that was back in the days when music was music and men were men and fish were fish. No, I don't know what the hell's going on.
Come on, Mr. Carlson. I think I can see right through you.
You can?
Shoot. You know what's going on around here?
I do. Oh, of course I do. How do you see it, though, Travis?
Well, I see before me a very shrewd manager.
True.
A man smart enough to hire the right people.
That's very astute.
And then you just step aside and you let them run the operation.
Son of a gun, you read me like a book. I can be tough. I can be mean. I can make those hard decisions. And the first decision we're going to have to make around here is what we're going to do about Mama.
Mama?
Yeah, my mother. She owns this station. Got to answer to her for everything that goes on around here.
We do. Does your mother want this station to make money?
Boy, does she. She gets this look in her eye when she talks about money. Starts making this noise down deep in the throat.
Oh, well, good. Because I think she's going to like what we do around here.
Huh?
Yeah, because I know that I can turn this station around.
Turn it around?
Make money.
Oh, well, in that case, Andrew, you've got a free hand from here on out. For the time being.
That's good. Where's North?
Out that door, down the hall to your left. Good. Think you're going to like it? Hey, one more thing.
Yes, sir.
These changes, they wouldn't necessitate the playing of rock and roll music, would they?
Possibly.
Dear God, she's going to kill us all.
It's during Season 1 that what is considered the greatest episode of WKRP aired. It also ranks up there among the best episodes in television history, and that's Episode 7 called Turkeys Away. Interesting that although it's a Thanksgiving-themed episode, it aired on October 30th of 78. In it, Mr. Carlson decides to take a more hands-on managerial approach by putting on the greatest Thanksgiving promotion in radio history, dropping live turkeys from a helicopter.
I got some tremendous news. I just concluded a deal that's going to make radio history. I can't give you all the pertinent information at this particular point in time, but I can tell you that you'll all be receiving your assignments later. Les, Herb, don't have to tell you what this means.
Heck no, big guy. I'm with you 100%.
Perhaps you should tell me, Mr. Carlson.
Les, we are now a rock and roll station. And these casually dressed people over here seem to think they've taken over the place. Just want to tell you that Les, Herb, and I were here before all of you. And we did pretty good on our own. Am I right, Herb?
I'd say better than pretty good, big guy.
Yes?
Just what exactly did you have in mind, Mr. Carlson?
Only the greatest promotion idea of all time.
Great.
All it's going to take is your complete cooperation, absolute secrecy, and 20 live turkeys. Herb, you're in charge of getting those turkeys.
You got him, big guy.
Well, it looks like this thing might work out for Carlson after all. He's got 2 turkeys with him already.
Unfortunately, the big guy's big plan didn't turn out as he'd hoped.
Fun time, USO.
Our
All right, fellow babies, and now it's time to go to our live remote man on the scene at the Pinedale Shopping Mall for the big WKRP turkey giveaway. So, take it away, Les Nessman.
This is Les Nessman, your man on the scene here at the Pinedale Shopping Center where the excitement is mounting. We're here to witness the big WKRP Turkey Thanksgiving giveaway.
Hey, you got permission to be out here?
What?
You're blocking my store here, buddy.
Don't you know who I am? I'm Les Nessman. I won the Buckeye News Hawk Award last year.
Good for you, Buckeye. Now get out of my doorway.
I'm sorry. Creep.
So far, so good, huh?
I'm here with hundreds of people who have gathered to witness what has been described as perhaps the greatest turkey event in Thanksgiving Day history. All we know for sure is
That in a very few moments, there are going to be a lot of happy people out here. Now, the crowd is curious, but well behaved. And I think I hear something now. The crowd is moving out into the parking area. And, oh yes, I can see it now. It's a helicopter. And it's coming this way.
A helicopter?
It's flying something behind it. I can't quite make it out. It's a large banner. And it says, Happy Thanksgiving. From WKRP. What a sight, ladies and gentlemen. What a sight. The copter seems to be circling the parking area now. I guess it's looking for a place to land. No, something just came out of the back of the helicopter. It's a dark object. Perhaps a skydiver plummeting to the earth from only 2,000 feet into the air. Second to the third. There's no parachutes yet.
Those can't be skydivers. I can't tell just yet what they are, but... Oh, my God, they're turkeys! Oh, Johnny, can you get this? Oh, they're crashing to the earth right in front of our eyes! One just went through the windshield of a parked car! Johnny, this is terrible. The crowd is
Running around, pushing each other. Oh, my goodness. Oh, the humanity. Oh, people are running about. The turkeys are hitting the ground like sacks of wet cement. Folks, I don't know how much longer the crowd is running for their lives. I think I'm going to step inside. I can't stay out here and watch this any longer. No, I can't go in there.
Children are searching for their mothers, and, not since the Hindenburg tragedy has there been anything like this. I don't know how much longer I can hold my position here, Johnny. The crowd...
Les, are you there? Les isn't there. Thanks for that on-the-spot report, Les. For those of you who just tuned in, the Pinedale Shopping Mall has just been bombed with live turkey. Film at 11.
The turkey disaster led to one of the greatest lines in television history, and it was delivered by Gordon Jump as Arthur Carlson.
Sir, it was the most unusual promotion idea I ever heard of. Never been anything else like it.
No, I don't suppose there has. I thought it would work. I planned this thing right down to the last detail. It was perfect. As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly.
Turkeys Away was based on an actual event that happened at WQXI, the Atlanta station creator and producer of the show Hugh Wilson worked at. According to an interview with the Classic TV History blog, an associate of Wilson at WQXI, Clark Brown, said it happened at a shopping center in Atlanta. The idea was to throw live turkeys out into the crowd from the back of a truck. In 1997, TV Guide ranked this episode at number 40 on its 100 greatest episodes of all time list. Season 1 of WKRP in Cincinnati aired a total of 22 episodes, beginning on September 18, 1978 and finishing on June 4, 1979. Initially receiving poor ratings, WKRP was put on hiatus after only 8 episodes, even though they included some of the most famous of the series, including Turkeys Away. Thankfully, good reviews and positive fan reaction helped. They received extra love from disc jockeys around the country who immediately took to its realistic portrayal of actual radio stations. They even sent bumper stickers from their stations to the show, which you can see plastered on the walls and bulletin boards during future episodes. As a result of all of that support, CBS decided to bring WKRP back for another season without any cast changes. Don't touch that dial. Up next, we take a look at the highlights of Season 2.
Hi, this is Andy Travis. We'll be right back after this message. Please don't leave me alone with this bunch.
Many people ask this age-old question, what happens when I can no longer feed myself? Call Shady Hills today. Remember, there just might not be a tomorrow.
WKRP, Cincinnati.
Welcome back to the Discovery Podcast, WKRP in Cincinnati episode. And we're on to season number 2, which first aired on Monday night, September 17th, 1979. This time, it followed MASH. In the new season, the set was expanded to allow the cast to interact more. A previously unseen communal office area known as the Bullpen was added to accommodate scenes with the entire cast. While KRP was essentially a comedy show, it did steer away from humor and deal with more serious topics, and episode 19 of the second season was one of them. It's also the highlight of that season. Originally aired on February 11th, 1980, the episode was titled In Concert. The entire WKRP staff is overcome with feelings of guilt and anger after a major rock concert they helped to promote results in the deaths of 11 concertgoers. It was based on an actual tragedy that occurred during a Who concert at Cincinnati's Riverfront Coliseum on December 3, 1979. A crush of concertgoers outside the Coliseum's entry doors resulted in the deaths of 11 people. The episode starts off with Johnny Fever giving away tickets to the show. Later on, we find out Mr. Carlson decides to take his son to the show.
The doctor is taking calls on the big KRP giveaway contest. The 2 final pair of tickets are yours for that big concert tonight. If you can complete this sentence correctly, are you ready? Caller number 1, disco is...
Fun.
Wrong. Caller number 2, disco is...
Heaven.
You people are way off. Caller number 3, you're on.
Disco is hell.
You got it, my man. And what is your name, sir?
Wayne Kluge. Why?
Well, Wayne, you just won 2 free tickets to that big show tonight.
Carmen's conned me into taking my son to that rock concert tonight. I don't want to go. I think that's why I got sick.
Wait a minute, you and little Arthur are going to go to this rock concert?
Yeah.
I think that's terrific. No, I mean, I can't believe it. Really? You're going to go to a rock concert?
Just settle down, Travis. Maybe if this station hadn't been promoting that rock concert, my kid wouldn't have heard about it and I wouldn't be taking him tonight. This station shouldn't promote any more rock concerts.
Now, we're not promoting this concert. We're giving away free tickets for publicity. How do you think you got your tickets for tonight?
How's it going to look, Travis? A grown man like me at a rock concert. I feel out of it, Travis. I remember the younger days when people used to get dressed up to go out and hear a live band. Like Tommy Dorsey, Duke Ellington.
Come on now, the music might be different, but the spirit's the same. You're going to listen to a live band, and you're going to have fun.
Well, I hope little Arthur has fun, because he could be a miserable little wretch.
Oh, I know. I know that he's going to have a good time.
The next morning, Mr. Carlson returns to work to tell his employees all about how much fun he had at the concert, only to find out what happened.
I don't know, man. I just can't believe it. I mean, 11 kids lose their lives. For what?
Well, what do you expect of these things?
What the hell does that mean, man? You ever been to a concert?
No, sir. But you're gonna get this when you got a lot of teenagers crowded together and worked up by a lot of loud rock music.
This happened before the concert started, Herb.
It just seems so unreal. I still don't believe it.
I gave away tickets for the thing.
Good morning. Oh, man, do I feel terrific today. Jennifer, you did it again. Cold of mine, right out of my head.
Right into mine.
Oh, I'm sorry about that, Venus. You know, I got a confession to make. I went to that rock concert last night thinking I was going to hate it, and I ended up having the best time.
Mr. Carlson.
Not now, Jennifer. I'm on a roll. Whatever it is, I'm on it. What's everybody got such a long face for?
You didn't listen to our station this morning, did you?
No.
Mr. Carlson, I don't know how to tell you this. 11 kids lost their lives last night at that concert.
What are you talking about, Travis? Is this some kind of bad joke?
No, sir, I wish it were.
Well, I was there. I didn't see anything.
None of us did.
happened before the concert started, Mr. Carlson. There was this large crowd outside the Coliseum. They'd been waiting there for hours and hours. It was very cold.
Somebody inside decided to open some doors?
There was some reserved seating.
Mostly general admission. That's what they call festival seating.
No, that's what they call a stampede.
And that's what happened.
The Who didn't even know what had come down until after the show.
Excuse me. I don't feel so good.
It's that damn general admission seating. This concert is just about my last.
It's not the concerts themselves.
Later on, Carlson talks with Venus Flytrap in the aftermath of the tragedy.
You know another amazing thing about all this, Venus?
What?
Yesterday morning when I went into my office, I'd never been to a rock concert. Didn't like the music. I didn't know any of the grooves. Completely uninvolved. And now that's changed.
One question. You gonna change us back to elevator music?
We're a rock and roll station, Venus, and we're gonna stay that way.
Good, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, so is Andy. You know, Venus, there's been a lot of talk about setting up a commission to look into what happened here.
Yeah.
It's not going to be just talk. This town's going to do it. Oh, this is a good town, Venus. We're responsible people here.
I know.
Good night.
Good night.
The episode was facing preemption in Cincinnati by Robert Gordon, then vice president of Cincinnati's CBS affiliate. Gordon initially felt the episode was in poor taste, but reconsidered after watching a preview and realizing the episode dealt with a growing need to ban festival seating, which was blamed for the disaster. Tim Reed, who played Venus Flytrap, talked about the episode in 2014 at the LA Cast reunion event.
It was a radical show. I mean, the kind of episodes that would come out of Hugh's mind and the rest of the writers. I remember the day we were having a party at Hugh's house on the weekend, and he came up with the idea to do a show on the Who concert, the tragedy of the Who concert. We were all standing around with a little too much to drink, and Hugh said to one of the writers, you know, we're a radio station in Cincinnati, and this happened there. We would have to do something about that. And literally the next Monday, that was like on a Saturday, down comes this script about the Who concert. Now, the problem with that is that the networks were concerned, as they should be, and everyone was concerned, but he stuck to it, and we had to literally, they didn't want us to do the story. They gave him a hard time. It was a very frustrating week for all of us, but the show was done. But they wouldn't allow it to air until the city council of Cincinnati viewed the episode. They would have to view the episode, and if they said no, that episode was not going to air. But they said yes, air the episode. It was that kind of, there were many shows that we did like that was really against the protocol of the network. And it caused Hugh a lot of angst, I'm sure. But those are the kind of things that kept us so involved in the show and the stories and the writing. And I thank him for that.
Season 2 had the most episodes of any, with 24, beginning on September 17, 1979, and ending on March 31, 1980. During that season, the show went through time changes. At one point, the show was moved back to its original earlier time. CBS executives wanted to free up the prized post-MASH slot for house calls, with former MASH star Wayne Rogers. They also felt that the rock and roll music and the sex appeal of Lonnie Anderson were better suited to the earlier slot, which at that time was thought of as mostly aimed at young people. But the mid-season time slot change didn't do much for the ratings. Wkrp finished at number 22 in the ratings for its second year. Starting from the second season, CBS moved Wkrp around repeatedly. The show lost nearly 2.5 million viewers on average for each of 4 time slot changes during the 1979-1980 season. But Wilson and his crew weren't about to give up yet. We'll be back with Season 3 after this very important message.
This is Jennifer, reminding you not to touch that dial or anything else.
Men, ever stop to think what's wrong with you? Dining alone. No beautiful girls in your life. Always the insipid jerk who makes other people want to throw up the moment you enter a room. Well, relax. 9 out of 10 times, the problem is simply loss of hair. And Mr. Macho has the answer. Natural-looking hair pieces that feel as good as they look. In the wind. In the jungle. In the shower. When you're with that very special girl. Only you and Mr. Macho will know your secret. So, in Cincinnati, dial 555-MCHO. That's 555-MACHO. Ask for Clarence.
WKRP, Cincinnati.
Welcome back to the Discovery Podcast episode all about WKRP in Cincinnati. And we're moving on to Season 3, which debuted on a brand new night, Saturday night, November 1st, 1980. Was it moved there for a reason? Story has it that in 1980, Hanna-Barbera planned to collaborate with Hugh Wilson to make an animated series of WKRP, with all 8 characters as dogs. The series never got off the ground. No WKRP cartoon on Saturday mornings, but we would get the real thing on Saturday nights. The third season's highlight episode centered around Dr. Johnny Fever, a.k.a. Rip Tide. The hour-long episode titled Dr. Fever and Mr. Tide ran on February 7th, 1980. In need of money, Johnny agrees to host a TV show, only to find he's hosting a disco dance show.
Let's see what we've got here. Barry Manilow, Barry Gibb, Barry White. You forgot Barry Goldwater.
Gee, I'm sorry. I thought you'd like it.
Not too much.
Well, you get used to it. It's television.
I can't play this stuff. I mean, here, I brought some records. See, Allman Brothers, Ray Charles, Buddy Holly.
Listen to me. This is just for the opening show. It's just for the premiere. Get it off to a big push, you know? Then we'll go from there.
Why don't we push off in the right direction?
Trust me. I know what I'm doing. Now, you're just a little nervous, that's all.
Can't you just find somebody else?
Look, John, I think what we should do is just cut right to the chase here. Now, if you walk out that door, they're going to call that breach of contract.
They? Who are they?
The people who own this station and 5 other ones. Now, I won't be able to stop them from suing you, and they will.
Howdy, hi, guys and gals. Hey, it's time for Gotta Dance. And we got a stack of wax from the beach for your feet. But first, a few words about Dr. Johnny Fever. Turns out the cat was a prima donna, so who needs him, huh? Right. Man was definitely stuck back in the 60s. And these are the 80s. So let's move with today. Let's move with the groove. Let's ride the tide. And that's me, Rip Tide. And I gotta dance!
Back at the station, Johnny tries to explain away his new gig.
Oh, Johnny, I hated it. Why did you do it? Why? How could you do this to yourself, Johnny?
Look, I had to do it.
Of course he did.
Yeah. I mean, it's contracts and legal stuff.
Sure it is.
I don't feel bad about doing it, though.
Of course you don't.
See, I had to save my own skin, so I came up with Rip Tide. And it's not a bad idea when you think about it.
Absolutely.
Look, I mean, I lucked into a great scam. I let this guy Rip Tide go on a goon binge for an hour a day. I pick up his paycheck. I mean, it's a great con. Do you see what I'm saying? I lucked into a good thing.
I guess.
Eventually, Johnny's alter ego, Rip Tide, begins to take over.
Okay, that was the Police. Da-dee-doo-doo, da-da-da-da, and I love it, I love it, I love it. And here's somebody else I really love, and I know you're gonna love him too. It's Mr. Elvis Presley.
Well, it's 1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready. Now go, cat, go, but don't you step on the loose.
It's not Elvis Presley. I'm wrong. It's Carl Perkins. Carl Perkins wrote Blue Suede Shoes, and he recorded it and released it about a month before Elvis's version. Elvis copied him a lot, and you can hear that. Or you could hear it if I wasn't talking on the top of the record.
Finally, Johnny comes to his senses and ditches the disco before returning to his rock and roll roots.
I'm awfully sorry about this, boys and girls, but the old Ripper just looked at his little ledger here, and this record does not have what it takes to be played on the show, okay? Hey, come on, boys and girls. I want to tell you, when you grow up, you'll understand there comes a time when you gotta dance. But nobody says you can't pick good music.
Ready, set, go, man, go. I got a gal that I love, so I'm ready.
Season 3 of WKRP in Cincinnati included 22 episodes starting on November 1st, 1980 and ending on April 12th, 1981. While still holding on to a devoted following, WKRP in Cincinnati was still struggling to attain the numbers they'd hoped for. Still, they were given the green light for a 4th season, which we'll get to next, right after another word from one of our friendly sponsors.
WKRP in Cincinnati will be back after this.
We're happy little worms. We love to we catch the big ones every time because we're hooked on you. Red wigglers, we can laugh the worms. We can laugh the worms. We can laugh the worms.
Remember, Red Wigglers, the Cadillac of worms. They're available in fine worm shops everywhere.
WKRP, Cincinnati.
Welcome back to the Discovery Podcast and our episode all about WKRP in Cincinnati. We're moving on to Season 4 of KRP, and it started with an explosion. Literally. As it so often did throughout the previous 3 years, the show was moved to a new night, and this time it was Wednesday. On Wednesday night, October 7th, 1981, part 1 of a 2-part episode called An Explosive Affair aired. WKRP receives a bomb threat from the terrorist group Black Monday. Andy sends Johnny and Venus to broadcast from the transmitter while the station is being searched. Soon after, Andy realizes the bomb is actually at the transmitter where Johnny and Venus are, yet they have no idea. Andy desperately tries to contact Johnny and Venus, but can't, since Johnny has smashed the phone out of frustration over a missed bet on a horse.
Now, do you want to tell me where you put the bomb? Well, do you want to tell me why you did that? Jennifer, to tell the police it's in a toolbox. Toolbox? No, I'm listening. We're all guilty.
Luckily, with the help from the police, Johnny and Venus get out before the bomb explodes. All this because the paranoid Johnny thinks the telephone police are after him.
I know what it is.
What?
It's the phone company. They know what I did here today. They're coming to get me, man.
Paranoia.
Listen, wake up, sucker. This is the phone company we're talking about. I mean, they see everything. They know everything. They got their own covert police force. I'm probably wired for sound right now. I gotta get out of here.
Johnny!
Don't use my name!
Back at the station, the staff thinks Johnny and Venus were still in the transmitter when the bomb went off.
Officer, it's 3 minutes past the time that the bomb was supposed to go off. Do you see anything? Officer?
Officer, are you sure?
Did you see anybody hanging around out there?
That's until Johnny and Venus show up.
You didn't see me. Hide me. What are you doing? Travis, I'll play anything. I'll play the Carpenters. I'll play Barry Manilow. Just hide
Johnny, where is Venus?
He's
What? Yeah? Oh, no.
He's parking the car.
Oh. Well, listen, Johnny, listen to me. What happened down there, man?
Oh, it was terrible. First there were the sirens, and then the explosion.
The bomb was at the transmitter. I was almost killed. The bomb was at the transmitter.
And by then I was about a quarter of a mile away, but I could see the place was crawling with phone cops.
The bomb was at the transmitter.
That's what we've been trying to tell you guys all afternoon.
Don't you people get it? It was the phone cops.
What is he talking about?
He beat the daylights out of the phone. He thinks they were after him.
Naturally, when we heard the sirens, we split.
He split. I stayed on the job. Then I realized he was driving off in my car. Had to chase him across half a cornfield.
Well, at least you got out of there before the bomb exploded.
Yeah, I tried to tell you, man, these phone cops play hardball.
I don't know how to tell you this, but there is no such thing as phone cops.
Oh, sure. Cover for him.
What? Look, the real cops. Oh, look at me. The real cops caught the maniac that did it.
The real cops are in on it.
What is this?
Apparently the bomb was hidden in a toolbox.
Toolbox?
The toolbox?
This leads to a hilarious ending scene with the great Les Nessman.
Johnny, Venus, you're alive.
The newsman's eye. You just can't fool him.
Well, that's wonderful.
Gee, thanks, Les.
Of course, I'll have to update my story.
Story.
How'd you like it, Andy?
How'd I like what, Les?
My 4 o'clock news report. Didn't you listen?
Les, the transmitter blew up.
Of course. That was my lead.
Wait a minute. You led off your newscast by telling them that we were off the air?
No. But I can include that in my update.
On Wednesday night, April 21st, 1982, the 22nd episode of Season 4, the 90th episode overall of WKRP in Cincinnati aired. It was called Up and Down the Dial. The new ratings have arrived, and WKRP has finally become a success.
The reason I called this little meeting is because of the ratings. That's right, the new book.
Oh, we weren't supposed to get that till next week.
No, we got it this morning. We have a lot of changes.
Finito, huh, Travis? Yeah, I've sensed it on the street for weeks now.
Number 6.
We came up to number 6.
Thanks! I knew it was good, but nothing like this.
Really?
Oh, how'd the news do?
Hey, well, can you believe all this, huh?
Oh,
What about Evening Drive?
See, you're number 3 overall. You're number 1 with women 18 to 35.
How'd the news do?
Johnny?
Don't tell me.
Number 1 all the way, pal.
Did you hear that, Trap?
Oh, way to go, Andy.
How did the news do, Andy? Oh, man, I don't have to make sales calls anymore. Just hang around here all day and the phone will ring off the wall.
Andy, how did news do?
Yeah.
Well, Les, look, news never does that good on a top 40 rocker. Don't worry about it.
But when a new news director shows up and says he was hired by Mama Carlson, Andy soon finds out that she plans to change the station to a 24-hour news format.
Oh, he did let you in.
Mrs. Carlson?
You said something about a major problem?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
What's my son done this time?
No, it's not your son, no.
Tarlick.
No, ma'am. Charles Van Senker.
Oh, dear.
Yes, he walked into the station this afternoon and announced he was the new news director, and that was news to me.
I'm sorry, Andrew.
You were eventually going to tell me, right?
Look, this is a very difficult decision for me.
What is this, dictator's remorse?
I had planned to discuss this with you next week. Are you familiar with Sattler, Selman, and Cardone?
Yes, they're a bunch of programming consultants.
A very expensive bunch of programming consultants. 665 pages on the Cincinnati market and WKRP's place in it.
So it's a thick book?
Would you care to read the last paragraph of the recommendations chapter?
No, I would not.
Well, then I'll read it. WKRP's top 40 audience is at its peak. The sound quality of the AM signal cannot compete with FM stations. If WKRP is to remain profitable in the long run, we recommend changing to a non-music format. All news.
All news? Well, I don't know the first thing about programming an all-news station.
That's why I hired Mr. Von Sanker.
All news? That is the most ridiculous thing I've heard since Herb Tarlick's Dancing Duck promotion. Does this book say that Cincinnati already has an all-news station?
Look, we'll be losing money the first 18 months.
We're finally making some profit here. We just got the ratings book. We're number 6.
It doesn't matter.
This does not make any sense.
Thanks,
May I say something to everyone? I just got back from Mrs. Carlson's.
Whoa.
It seems to be over. Starting next week, she wants to change the format. Next week, no more rock and roll. You're putting us on. Come on, Rod. I wish I was. It's a business decision.
What kind of format?
24 hours a day of news. I'm supposed to tell everybody that you're welcome to stay and be a part of the new WKRP, the information station. There's jobs for all of you.
Andy, can't we do anything?
Yeah, let's walk. Let's shut her down.
Look, I already told her if we didn't do things my way, I was gone.
Ultimately, it's Dr. Johnny Fever who confronts Mama Carlson and figures out that she never wanted the station to succeed after all. The station was merely a tax write-off.
Profit and loss are merely theoretical terms in a diversified conglomerate like Carlson Industries. It's not the plus and minus, Mr. Fever. It's the plus and plus if the minuses are played correctly. You don't understand, and I don't expect you to.
No, I understand. Believe me, this is so deeply warped, even I get it. KRP is not supposed to make money. That's the deal. We're set up to lose, but we didn't. And that's why you're changing the format, so you can lose money for 2 more years.
Johnny's also the one who talks her into keeping the station just as it is and leave it in the hands of her son, Arthur.
You're telling your own son that you want him to be the general manager of the number 1 station in the market, and you'd be happier if it was 16th. How do you think he'd feel if he knew?
Hirsch, is she here? Mama, I got Andy and V. Oh, they're out in the car. I was telling them, trying to explain what you told me about being the best, and Fever, what are you doing here?
Just chatting. Your mother has high hopes for KRP.
Being number 1.
Not quite.
Fever?
Oh, is our little conversation confidential?
I don't believe I'm following this.
Are you threatening me?
No, heck no, boy.
I'll tell you something, Macy. Your mother does not want you or WKRP to
All right, Fever, that's quite enough.
Would somebody like to explain something to me? I'm a pretty good listener.
Arthur, I want you to keep KRP just the way it is.
Number 6.
No. The format.
Oh. Well, what about the American way?
Wait a minute, Ace. I think your mother is saying she believes in you. Am I right, Miss Carlson?
Right.
A mother's love. Boy, I'll tell you. It's deeply moving to see something like this.
It seemed like everything was back to normal at WKRP. It would go on to remain a rock and roll station. Unfortunately, the show had reached its end, but nobody knew it at the time. Up and Down the Dial would be the final episode. Despite its solid ratings, the show was unexpectedly canceled at a time it was expected to be renewed. The writers and the cast were never able to have a proper finale, never had a chance to say goodbye to their loyal viewers. It seemed as if WKRP in Cincinnati would be forgotten by most, remembered by few. But years later, it went into syndication. Thankfully, the show had just enough steam to get there. Most of the time, a show needs 100 episodes for syndication, but with 4 full seasons and 90 shows under its belt, KRP had just enough. After it went into syndication, something happened. It became an unexpected success. For the next decade, it was one of the most popular sitcoms in syndication, outperforming many programs that had been more successful in prime time. The success of the reruns also sparked a brand new version of the show in 1991 called The New WKRP in Cincinnati. Jump, Sanders, and Bonner reprised their roles as Mr. Carlson, Les Nessman, and Herb Tarlick, appearing as regular characters, while Hessman, Reed, and Anderson made guest appearances as Johnny Fever, Venus Flytrap, and Jennifer Marlowe. The show lasted until 1993 before it was canceled. It just didn't have the same magic that the original cast had. Despite that, the show's original episodes continue to run in syndication and continue to pull in huge numbers. One downside to the show's syndication had to do with the music heard in the show. The music licensing deals made at the time of production were for a limited number of years. When the show initially went into syndication, most of the original music remained intact, but once the licenses expired, later versions of the show didn't have the music as first broadcast. Instead, generic sound-alikes by studio musicians were used to avoid paying additional royalties. In some cases, when the music was playing in the background of a dialogue scene, some of the characters' lines were redubbed by not-so-good sound-alike actors to either make buried lines audible again or to cover up a reference to an artist or song that was now prohibited. This started in the early 90s and continued right through to the late 90s when it ran on Nick at Night. When the original DVD set was finally released in 2007 by Fox, much of the music was replaced by generic substitutes. Some scenes were even shortened or cut entirely, and voiceovers were used to avoid using unlicensed songs. But thankfully in 2014, Shout Factory released the first complete series with the original soundtrack mostly restored. On their website they wrote, "As fans of the show ourselves, we tried our best to clear all the songs that made it memorable, but in a few cases it was simply impossible to get the rights. We were able to include the vast majority of the music, though, with the aim of presenting the best possible release of WKRP on DVD." One band we heard a few songs from on the show was the Beatles. If it were up to Hugh Wilson, it would have been a lot more. Wilson was a huge fan of the band and wanted the show to include as many of their songs as possible. Unfortunately, the Beatles were the most expensive artists to license a song from, so only 3 of their songs were used in the entire series: I'm Down, Here Comes the Sun, and Come Together. One other Beatles note: after John Lennon's assassination in December of 1980, a photo of him was displayed in the background prominently as a memorial tribute. The show was famous for playing music of up-and-coming bands of the time. Many artists have said that their music being played on WKRP helped their popularity, including Blondie, U2, The Cars, Toto, The Knack, and Devo. Blondie was so grateful for the show making their song Heart of Glass a hit that they gave their gold record to the producers. It's hanging in the WKRP bullpen in seasons 2 through 4. And now we finish with what became of Hugh Wilson and the original cast members of WKRP after the show ended. Wilson went on to direct, create, and produce various film and television comedies, including 1984's Police Academy and The First Wives Club in 1996. Sadly, he just recently passed. Wilson died on January 14, 2018 in Charlottesville, Virginia, at the age of 74. Gary Sandy continued to work as an actor after KRP ended. He made some guest TV show appearances before returning to his first love, the theater. His last TV movie was A Place Called Home in 2004. Gordon Jump did some TV and film work. He reprised his role of Arthur Carlson in the WKRP 1991 reboot and landed a gig as the lonely Maytag washer repairman in commercials that ran for several years starting in 1989. Sadly, Jump passed away in 2003 at the age of 71. The 2 actors who played Mother Carlson have both since passed. The original actress from the pilot, Sylvia Sidney, passed in 1999, just a month before her 89th birthday, while Carol Bruce, who played the role for the rest of the series, died at the age of 87 at the Motion Picture and Television Country House and Hospital in Woodland Hills, California. Lonnie Anderson went on to do a number of television movies and was on a short-lived series called Partners in Crime with Linda Carter in 1984. She played a former Las Vegas showgirl who inherits a bunch of money in the 1986 sitcom Easy Street. She also worked in feature films, including 1983's Stroker Ace. It was there she met her future husband, Burt Reynolds. After a highly publicized marriage, it ended in a highly publicized, bitter divorce. These days, she makes the occasional TV appearance. Jan Smithers worked occasionally after her role as Bailey Quarters on WKRP ended. In 1986, she married actor James Brolin. She became a stepmother to his 2 sons and had a daughter with Brolin. They divorced in 1995. After living in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada, she now lives in Ojai, California. Frank Bonner continued acting after KRP. From 1988 to 1990, he played the role of Father Hargis, headmaster of the fictional St. Augustine's Academy on the TV show Just the 10 of Us, which was a spin-off of Growing Pains. He reprised his role as Herb Tarlick on the new WKRP in Cincinnati and directed shows, including Who's the Boss, Head of the Class, Evening Shade, Newhart, and every episode of the NBC Saturday morning sitcom City Guys. Bonner also appeared in 5 episodes of Saved by the Bell, The New Class, and directed 4 episodes. Richard Sanders continued acting after WKRP ended in '82. He had guest spots on Newhart, Murder, She Wrote, Designing Women, and Married with Children. He also appeared in films, including the Robert De Niro, Cuba Gooding movie, Men of Honor in 2000. He played bartender Donnie Moore. Sanders also joined Gordon Jump and Frank Bonner on the new WKRP in Cincinnati in 1991. Besides being an actor, Sanders is a screenwriter, and in 1993 starred in a computer game called Day of the Tentacle as the voice of Bernard. Tim Reed went on to a successful career in acting after playing Venus Flytrap on KRP. He starred in the late 80s shows Frank's Place and Snoops, but most notably starred in the long-running sitcom Sister, Sister, which ran from 1994 to 1999. He played Ray Campbell, the adopted father of twins separated at birth. He also had a recurring role on That 70s Show as William Barnett, and later opened a production studio with his wife Daphne in Virginia until 2015. He continues to act and is scheduled to appear on an upcoming Netflix series produced by Dolly Parton called Heartstrings. And last is Howard Hessman. After WKRP was canceled, he appeared on the TV show One Day at a Time for a few seasons, then did some movies, including 1983's Dr. Detroit with Dan Aykroyd, 1985's Police Academy 2, Their First Assignment, and 1985's Clue. In 1986, Hessman landed another big television role, this time as a teacher in the high school sitcom Head of the Class as Mr. Moore. He left the show in 1990 and continued to appear in television and film, including the 1997 movie Gridlocked with Tupac Shakur. He's had small guest roles on That 70s Show, Touched by an Angel, and The Practice in the 90s, along with Crossing Jordan in the early 2000s. All right, fellow babies, it's time for me to sign off. That's it for this episode of Discovery. I'm Eric Senich. Join me next time for another episode. You can find Discovery on Facebook at facebook.com/The Discovery Podcast Home. Send an email to thediscoverypodcast@gmail.com. Also, be sure to subscribe to the show on Spreaker or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Discovery is on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, among many other platforms. And give the show a 5-star review if you like it. That helps it get out to more people who haven't discovered Discovery yet. Thanks for listening.
It's the hour of darkness, children. This is Venus. Be still, my children. And know that there is no understanding, only love and a nice set of wheels.